Judge, start with you.
I think this is the first time we have a judge up here. That's exciting. Judge Dave Larson. This is on motivations and visions for the state's highest court. Judge Larson, with your extensive experience as a trial judge and your background as a highly rated trial lawyer, what motivated you to seek a position on the state's highest court? How do your personal values and professional experiences shape your vision for addressing the current challenges within our criminal justice system? Specifically, what initiatives would you prioritize to improve coordination and strategy within the criminal justice system across the state?
Thank you. That's a great question. But we had 3 minutes, you said? Oh, we're like 3 hours. But really, let me answer it this way from a standpoint of what it means to be a judge. First of all, you have to love the fact that your objective, your only oath is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. There's no room for politics. It's just pure the law and the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 1 of our state constitution says all political power is inherent in the people. Governments derive their just, and I emphasize just, powers from the consent of the government. And the purpose of government is to protect and maintain individual rights. We've gotten a little bit away from that in recent years. And the idea is to bring us back to that very, very basic provision. There's a provision in our Constitution, Article 1, Section 32, that says a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to individual right and the perpetuity of free government. And the reason that's in there is because we have to constantly bathe ourselves in the principles that make us free. And if we don't do that, what's happened for thousands of years is a conflict between people that want to be free and the people who want to dominate and control. And right now, the people that want to be free just want to live in love. People want to dominate and control, keep encroaching until you have to push back. Right now, we're at the edge of a cliff, and it's either fall off the cliff or push back. When it comes to criminal justice, I've been actually recognized nationally in terms of my strategies, and I don't want everybody glaze over with the technicalities. But right now we have a very fragmented system that keeps passing people back and forth. And there's ways to do this, and our Supreme Court's been silent. Rome's burning, and they've been fiddling, right? They fiddle with a lot of other stuff, and a lot of other things, but this has been the lowest priority. So in the trial courts, we're flailing around, and the strategies I've developed have started being accepted in the legislature on both sides of the aisle, and we're starting to make progress. And to get me on the Supreme Court, we'd be able to help the trial courts actually deal with the issues that are facing our community in an organized way instead of the fragmented and chaotic way we're doing it now. Thank you. At least 3. Helen Whitener, Raquel Montoya Lewis, Steve Gonzalez, Mary Yu, that's 4. I think that's 4 of the 9. Or I believe, there might be 5. So, what was the next part of the question? There are 9.
Yeah, how many were appointed by Inslee?
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
How often?
At least 4, if not 9. So elections for Supreme Court justices, imagine that there's 6-year terms, and every 2 years there's 3 of them up. Okay? So this year it's Chief Justice Gonzalez and Justice Gordon McLeod, and then the open seat because Susan Owens decided to retire, right? And in 3 years there'll be, or 2 years there'll be 3 more up, 2 years there'll be 3 more up after that. So that's how often they're up for election, and there you go.
Is it fair to say that it's a rare opportunity for we the people to actually have the opportunity to have influence?
Under the way it's been the last few years, extremely rare for there to be an open seat. And that's why I ran. I was going to retire next year. There's too many things happening and too many reasons why, like I got 4 grandchildren now, just had my 4th. Too many reasons to kind of say, wait a minute, I can't walk away from this now. I always see elected office, and I hope I influence other people that are running for office too in this way. I was with a group of elected officials, and there were some high school students that were there. I'm very involved in civics education, and there's high school students, and one of the students asked, when did you feel closest to your position? Well, each of the politicians went down the line, and one was the mayor. They talked about some initiative they had for the city. Legislator talked about a law they passed, talked about a program they created. And it got to me, and I said, I was in the back of the line at a chili cook-off. And this person that I knew came up and said, hey, Judge, how you doing? And they walked away after we talked a couple minutes. The person behind me said, hey, you're a judge, just cut up in the front of the line. And I said, actually, when I don't have my robe on, I'm like anybody else. And I told the students, the reason I told you that story is my number one position is that of citizen. I play a role as a judge. I have a responsibility. I'm a servant, not a master. And the problem we have now is too many people seek power and not enough people seek responsibility. Huge difference in the outcome. It's about power, it's about what you do for me, and about what you owe me. And when it's about responsibility, it's my duty to you and what I owe you. And that's what our whole form of governance, Article 1, Section 1, is based on the assumption that we have people that are in love with responsibility and want to hold power at arm's length. Because power has always been destructive. And so that, above all else, is what, because right now all the things we're talking, and you notice I wasn't clapping or all the political stuff because I'm so pure just trying to say political. But inside you want to clap as a person, but as a judge. But the point is we're treating symptoms. We're not treating the underlying disease. And what I'm talking about is treating the underlying disease. The whole ethic of the way we approach governance. We're so far up, we're so interested in getting our way that we've lost our way. I'm entitled to my opinion, and you're entitled to my opinion too. And if you don't agree with me, you're whatever. There's so many, I work closely with the legislature, there's so many times the laws don't pass because the wrong person had the idea. And that's just abhorrent. Everything that anybody should ever stand for. So we got to start understanding that there's a lot deeper issues than just whether there's a third bridge or all these other things, right? Those issues are influenced by power and responsibility. I'll close, and I know I'm going over 3 minutes, but I'll close with this. I was on the Brandy Cruz show, and she asked me about why the legislature wasn't getting those initiatives through, right? And I instead of getting into a legal issue and everything else, I took it from a standpoint of the power and responsibility kind of conflict, right? And I said, if it's about power and it's your enemy, the other side that wants to get something through, you're going to do everything you can to keep it from going through, right? When it's about responsibility, if the Constitution says you're supposed to do something, you do it. And that's really the best example I can come up with, the difference between power and responsibility. Our founders hated power. That's why we have 3 branches of government and everything else. But I'll shut up at that. But the point is that unless we start treating the disease, the fact that we've lost, every year I start my street law class at Todd Beamer High School, I ask, what's the most important to protect our freedom? And they go around the room, military, police, constitution, etc. You know what the answer is? The belief that it's important. Because as soon as you stop believing it's important, then it starts to whittle away. And we are where we are right now because we stopped believing it was important.
Pete, over the past 3 years, you have engaged in significant.
Okay, so this is on the topic of judicial independence and legal interpretation. Judge Larson, you have emphasized the importance of respecting and following our state constitution and the proper role of the courts in upholding and interpreting the law. Can you elaborate on how you would ensure judicial independence while serving on the state's highest court? How do you plan to navigate cases that involve contentious legal and constitutional issues, ensuring that your decisions are both legally sound and reflective of the principles enshrined in our Constitution? Additionally, how will you work to maintain public confidence in the judiciary and its role in a balanced and just legal system that adheres to the state constitution?
Again, 3 minutes. Okay. So you have to be grounded in principles. If you're not grounded in principles, yes, in other words, right now the problem we have is our compass is broken. And so if you don't, if you remember that Article 1, Section 32, frequent recurrence to fundamental principles, the essential to individual rights, well, it's also essential to all free branches of government. So the people, I've actually written a thing that I presented now called How Freedom Works. You can imagine the Constitution as being the foundation of our country. What I talk about is the hard panel that the foundation sits in. And it's a belief system. If you don't believe it, then it's just words on paper. An example I used at the Clark County Republic of Women was I read from a constitution of another country, and they had free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, etc. It was communist China. So if you don't believe in those underlying principles, if the foundation is sitting on a loose bedrock, then you end up failing that, and then confidence in the system is depleted because you're now you're making decisions based upon power instead of responsibility. You're making decisions on where the result dictates the law rather than the law dictates the result, and then you lose confidence, and it then becomes political. And exactly where we are now, where people don't have confidence in. Really, we don't have a military, we don't have a police, we don't have anything to enforce. The only thing we have in the courts to enforce is the confidence in the people and the outcome of the decision. And if you're grounded in principles and grounded in the Constitution and grounded in those things, public confidence will come from that. Now, judicial independence, there's a thing called the Council on Independent Courts that was formed about 3 years ago. That was formed based on the work I have done going throughout the state and protecting judicial independence throughout the state. One thing I want to make sure everybody knows before we go is that this is an open seat. It's the first time in 12 years there's been an open seat. The standard is for the incumbent to resign, and under our state constitution, the governor appoints the replacement, right? They become the incumbent. There's no confirmation process. There's no check and balance. So one person has selected 169 of the 205 judges that are currently sitting on Superior Court, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court. That's a threat to judicial independence. When one person, it was one of the grievances in the Declaration of Independence that the king got to appoint the judges, and the judges only answered to the king. Not that Governor Inslee's a king. But the point is that, and I can't be political, but nobody's a king. This would be wrong if it was Governor Larson. It would be wrong. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest threat to judicial independence, is the power condensed in one person to select who the judges are. And this is an opportunity for the people themselves to decide the outcome. My main opponent is endorsed by 8 of the 9 justices, and he's blowing the horn on that. I told the Seattle Times that's exactly why they need to endorse me, because they need a different voice than they need. It's because I'm not endorsed by them that makes me special. And judicial independence comes from